few things that, sorry, that's not the one I wanted to show. Highlight a few things. So as with all others, Performance Point is a SharePoint service. And as you can see it here, Performance Point is available as a service, and you need to have an application proxy for that service in order to be able to use it. Once you do that and you activate the Performance Point monitoring server feature, you will have access to the new functionalities of Performance Point. And when you create new sites, you're going to have access to the Dashboard Designer. The Dashboard Designer is an application that is deployed using click once, and from this point on, you're going to be able to do everything you did with Performance Point in previous versions. But the one that I would like to focus on today is Excel services. So let me start with a very, very simple thing to do, and then we're going to kind of build up on this simple demo in order to see what are the features that we can use in Excel services. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to load some data using the Gemini add-in for Excel. I'm not going to load a large amount of data, just a couple of hundreds of thousands of rows, in order to create a new spreadsheet that will have some back-end data available in it. So I'm going to load it from a local database, which I have prepared on my machine. I have this instance of SQL Server 208 R2. So now Gemini is going to retrieve the list of available databases. I'm using the demo database, which is called the Contoso database. Contoso database is a new, improved database that will come with SharePoint 207 with a set of data that is much more relevant and more interesting to use in these scenarios. So I'm going to select just a list of tables. By default, the original version of the Contoso database has a couple of millions of rows for fact tables, for example. So I'm not going to select them all, but just a subset of those rows. So this is why I've created a view which is called Fact Sales Reused, that I'm going to use. And I'm going to link it to one dimension, which is the dimension of stores. Contoso is a company that has a large number of stores worldwide, and this particular data warehouse contains information about sales data. So now the spreadsheet is going to load and is going to input data and creating the internal Gemini model for. I think I might have hit cancel by mistake. Anyway, once the model is loaded, you can see here that now we have a whole set of data, of Gemini data, which then we can use later to create maybe pivot tables or stuff like that. Now I'm going to switch back to my workbook, and once I have the workbook here, now I can start creating pivot tables using that particular type of data. Not going to enter into too much detail about Gemini because it's not really the main focus of today's talk. But as you can see now, I have available a very simple editor where I can start creating the pivot table. So I'm going to use a very simple type of information. I'm going to get information about stores. So I leave it this way. As I mentioned, I don't want to enter into too much details, but once I create that particular type of spreadsheet, now it becomes available, and I can upload it into SharePoint. As you can see here, I've saved that spreadsheet under the name Store KPI. Store KPI is a final spreadsheet which contains data in the Gemini model as well as a pivot table. So let's just take a short look to Store KPI. And now SharePoint is going to render it into Excel Web Access, which is actually the user experience provided by Excel services. In the meantime, I've also prepared a... it has been... This is, as you can see, this is what I have as my spreadsheet. This is a pretty plain spreadsheet. It's nothing too fancy. But keep in mind that it has a few hundreds of thousands of rows in the bag. It might have had a few hundreds of millions of rows should I use a stronger machine and not my laptop. So that is an integrated multi-dimensional model that is part of the spreadsheet and works behind us and gives us information about stores. And the result of this particular pivot table is a simple list where I have the store ID on the left, I have the sales amount, and I have a very, very simple KPI, a calculated KPI, which actually does nothing more than compare the amount of sales with the threshold value that I've set here, that I've exposed actually as a parameter, and decides whether it's a good amount of sales or a bad amount of sales. And it's quite easy that if I lower, for example, to 1 million, if I lower this threshold, then we'll see that in our spreadsheet automatically all the KPIs are going to be set to 1, because now the threshold is much lower.